Hi, I'm Matt Suk with MINOX. Over the years working in optics, I've encountered a lot of different questions from consumers. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how do I pick the right optics for me? Whether it's a rifle scope, spotting scope, or a binocular. These have to do with the overall optical performance, mechanics, durability, structure, and some other things to keep in mind when you're looking for that next pair of binoculars or rifle scope. Another thing to consider is, what are you going to use your optics for? Specifically, if we look at binoculars, there is a certain equation you have to focus on to see what exactly you want. Now, this equation is how much magnification you want, the weight, and the brightness that your binocular gives you. Most popular is a 10 by 40, 42, 44, 43 type of binocular. Now, what those give you in a 10 power is great detail recognition over longer distances. And with a 42 or 43 or 44 millimeter objective lens, you gather a good amount of light. Even though with a 10 power magnification, you're shrinking that a little bit. An 8 power magnification gives you on average a much brighter image than a 10 by binocular. Now, a lot of times people also want to go with something that brings in a lot of light, like a 50 or a 52 or a 56 millimeter objective lens. And that's great. But if you're lugging it around the mountains, you have to factor in the amount of weight that a binocular like that will bring. Granted, an 8 by 52 is a great choice when you want to get a very bright image and get in a lot of light and shoot late into the evening. But if you're hiking up mountains, something like that might be a little bit prohibitive in overall weight. The other thing to consider when it comes to magnification is in the stability of your image. An 8 power gives you a much stabler image than say a 10, a 12, or a 15 power. You have a much harder time in holding it steady than say, for example, a 10 by 52 or an 8 by 56. The downside of something like that is the fact that you get a lot of arm fatigue after a while, and that leads to shake. In those cases, always look for a binocular that's capable of being used with a tripod adapter. All MINOX binoculars are threaded in the front, and the cap can easily be removed without in any way hurting the internal integrity of the binocular. Now, as with any optics, the most important part of the entire equation is actually the optical performance. The optical performance is achieved by using good quality glass and good coatings along with a good optical design. Now, for you, when you're going to your favorite retailer, how do you know who has what's being used? Well, a lot of that information can be found online these days, and you can just do research and look and see who's using what kind of coatings, if someone's actually detailing what kind of coatings they're using. Like at MINOX, we state that we use our M-Star coatings. Everybody says our lenses are multi-coated, and technically a multi-coating starts at 2 layers. I mean, at MINOX, as an example, like with any reputable optics company, when you ask us, we tell you our M-Star coatings are 21 layers. So you get the best optical performance regardless of price. Anybody can tell you anything about optical performance. The best way to really know what you're dealing with is to test it. Now, in any retail store, it's really hard sometimes to test because you're dealing with, very neutralizing light. But there are a few little tests you can do in the store that'll help you determine quality. Now, one of them is an exit pupil test. Now, an exit pupil is actually, if you take your binoculars and you hold them up to the light, you see a little circle, white circle. That is your exit pupil coming out of the binoculars. Most quality optics, you have a very crisp, round circle. In lesser quality optics, you'll often have slight ghost imaging in the exit pupil, or maybe even a slightly squared off exit pupil. If that's the case, you have to watch out for that optical quality. If you have a retailer that is good at selling optics, a lot of times what they'll do is say, come back just before closing, or when the sun's going down or the sun's coming up, We'll meet, we'll go out and we'll play around with different optics. That really is the best time to go out and test and see the optical performance and see who does well in what light conditions and until what hour. Now, if you're at a retailer where that's not possible, especially some of the larger volume retailers, then your best bet is to pick out certain things within the store. Every store has a dark corner. Look at details at long range within the store, because some of these have really large store layouts, and a lot of times you have animal mounts. If you're looking at the taxidermy within a store, try to pick out little details and compare and contrast and see which optics really pick out what details at what distances. Beyond optical performance, you want to look at mechanics. How does it focus? Is the focusing wheel nice and smooth? Does it have a lot of play? By play, I mean is when it's static, how easy is it to move the focusing wheel? Other mechanical things to look at are overall how the eye cups move. Do they twist? Do they rest in different stops? Or do they just straight pull out? Or is it a rubber eye cup that you simply fold back? Of course, what you want is a sturdy eye cup. So if you're looking at mid-range to high-end optics, obviously a rubber fold-back eye cup is not really what you're looking for. Aside from optical performance and mechanics, you want to look at the durability of the product. So you look and you feel and you touch. You see how sturdy and how thick the rubber armoring is, if it even has a rubber armor. Now, if you're really abusive on your optics, you bang it around the mountains a lot, chasing sheep or elk or mule deer, you're going to want something with a strong rubber armor. Now, there are different materials used today in binoculars, whether it's very lightweight plastic, whether it's polycarbonate, strong, durable, but a little bit heavier aluminum, or the very strong, very sturdy, and lightweight magnesium housings found in a lot of high-end optics, like the HG and Apo HG binoculars from MINOX. Next thing you want to look at is waterproofing. To what is my optic, specifically say a binocular, rated? Is there a depth rating? Now, a lot of literature will show waterproof, yes or no. And some will actually state to what depth it's tested. Say, for instance, like with our BL or HG or BV line of binoculars that are tested to 16.4 feet. Now, what does that mean if something's really waterproof tested? Well, what waterproof testing actually does is also help against pressure changes. Say, for example, you want to go to northern Alaska and you're in a bush plane and you have different pressure changes, or you're going from high and dry in places like Utah and Colorado, and then you go hunt somewhere where it's very humid. You want to make sure that your optics can withstand different temperature changes, humidity changes, and pressure changes, and altitude changes with ease. And that's where good waterproof rating and a filling of nitrogen, or like in many of our optics, argon, is very crucial in the overall survival of your optics. Another thing to consider when shopping for optics is what's the warranty? Is it just a limited 5-10 year limited manufacturer warranty? Or is it, like the MINOX lifetime total coverage warranty, a so-called no-fault warranty? That means whether it's our doing for some reason, or whether you just have an unfortunate accident, you're covered no matter what, because after all, your optics is an investment, whether you're spending $300 or $2,000. Last thing to consider are statistics. You always have a spec chart. You can either find it at your retailer through the literature given there from the optics companies, or from the optics company's website. Now, the one thing about stats is they give you a numerical value. They don't actually show you any quality. But some of the stats you want to keep an eye on are things like, say, for instance, the twilight factor. That just is an equation as to how bright your image might be. Really important for me and for most hunters is field of view. Now, the more you can see in a given section that you're glassing, the better it is for you, and the less movement you need, the less eye fatigue, the less arm fatigue over a longer time. You'll also want to go back and check and see if in those specs they have their waterproof rating and overall size and dimensions of the optics you're using.